Just a couple of things that have been in my mind the last few days, and maybe I will try to make some kind of a as decent and as possible presentation of Dharma based on these things, you know, doing ping pong in my mind during the last few days. So we practice bodhicitta like since Friday evening on this retreat and on all retreats. We practice and workshop, we really yank the heck out of bodhicitta, trying to understand what the practice is and trying to understand our Buddha nature. So looking at bodhicitta from two different perspectives, relative perspective and absolute perspective. And so bodhicitta is something extremely important, and it should, for any dedicated, serious practitioner, it should really become her or his backbone. Physically, we have the spine, the backbone, to keep us upright. It enables us to do all kinds of things in these human bodies. In the same way, we need to have that same role for bodhicitta in our Dharma spiritual practice. It needs to be strong. And how do we develop bodhicitta? Well, I said that I would teach Tonglen on this retreat, which is one type of bodhicitta practice, and I will. But then bodhicitta can be understood by understanding how we ourselves suffer and are confused existentially. Imagine where we would be, where we have been, without teachings of reality, without Dharma, without the transmission of Guru Rinpoche and Yeshe Tsogyal. Imagine where you would be and where you were before you connected with Dharma. Samsaric mind with endless self-based and hence deluded ideas and thoughts and emotions takes us to dark places, dark and confused places. If it's not pitch black dark, then at least it is gray. Gray places like depression, anxiety, perhaps mild anger. With strong anger, hatred, we are already in pitch black darkness. So these are very human things, aren't they? But you know, the delusion takes control of the whole human body, mind and heart. It makes, in that way, it makes our lives and the lives of everybody else miserable. So one thing that is very useful to acknowledge and contemplate when we want to understand why bodhicitta has a really key role in Mahayana teaching is to contemplate our own suffering and how we are getting out of that with the help of Dharma. And then think how suffering affects everybody else around us. Doesn't it, even the thought of it starts kind of create something, some sensation, some pressure, maybe some what is that? It's some empathy in our hearts. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that's why bodhicitta is there. We have wisdom and compassion. Wisdom means removing ignorance, self-based ignorance, and compassion means that we want others also to be able to remove their ignorance. And we use this as a motivation to be able to get our hands, to be able to reach our awareness and attention into the all the places in our subtle body, in our mind. If we didn't have that motivation, we could not reach the depths of the substrate consciousness. You could compare substrate consciousness, even though it can be casually discussed about, we can compare it to, let's say, what is that? In front of Japan, in the sea, there is this deep, it's like 11 kilometers deep hole in the bottom of the sea. It's Mariana
Trench.
Cave or something like this.
Mariana Trench.
Mariana Trench. So substrate consciousness can be compared to that. Even though we experience, every one of us experiences the different layers of the substrate consciousness on daily basis, we need really specific tools and specific yogic know-how to get to the bottom of that Mariana Trench in our minds. And we cannot do that. One of those know-hows is bodhicitta. Without bodhicitta, there's no way getting to the bottom of it. This is something that, Mahayana Buddhist and Vajrayana Buddhist masters throughout the times have said about the so-called Shravaka path that doesn't have bodhicitta principle. Shravakayana, Arhatyana, Hinayana. So how to understand and how to develop bodhicitta is through, we have hearts and we have minds, we have intelligence, and we can feel. We can feel our own pain and we can feel the pain of others. Feeling the pain of others and doing something about it. Here, in existential means, is what bodhicitta is. It's like saying that we cannot mature as practitioners without bodhicitta. We will remain kind of children or adolescent as youth without bodhicitta. So we really should contemplate about the suffering of others. And to me personally, this is not a difficult contemplation. We can see self-based confusion on the face of everybody when you step out the door. Isn't that right? And that is really striking. Can be overwhelming. So it is striking and can at moments be overwhelming, but we don't need to be overwhelmed by it. Because, even Mahasiddhas cannot remove the suffering of all beings. We can take a vow and we can make a resolution to do that. But even if Padmasambhava himself was here walking on the street, going to the supermarket next door, and saw that pain on the faces of people, he couldn't take it away from them. I'm sure that if Padmasambhava was walking down the street here, he wouldn't be overwhelmed by it, because he understands how it works. You know, no God, no Mahasiddha, nobody can take away the suffering of somebody else's mind. What we can do, however, is that, and therefore we don't need to be overwhelmed by our responsibility. There is no responsibility of that kind that we could go and just somehow magically or yogically take it out from people. It doesn't work like that. But what we can do is that we can, through those opportunities and chances we have, tell people about Dharma and tell people about suffering. This is a very, again, I'm shaking my finger. I gotta learn it off. It's a mannerism now, by now. So suffering, when explained, self-based confusion, self-based suffering confusion due to the sense of meanness, this contracted small I. It is very easy to explain and very easy to understand. If people understand that, if they hear others telling about this, it is very easy for them to understand why yoga, meditation, mindfulness, Dharma could be practiced, isn't it? If you just tell them that, well, we have this whatever type of practice session, so come over. Why? Why should I? But if you explain them, because you probably have confusion existentially because of your sense of self, that's why. So it's very simple logic, isn't it? And I've been, since last year, we've had this Acharya course with a dozen or so Pemako practitioners. There's a bunch of practitioners in our Sangha who are becoming Acharyas, instructors. And well, I'm really happy about that there are more people who can share our teachings, can share Buddhist teachings. But at the same time, it's kind of I'm just waiting for the pandemic regulations to end so that our acharyas and teachers can continue working normally and start working normally rather than just internet. So what is really essential is meeting people and mingling with people. I think that's really important for practitioners. And kind of related to this, well, this is kind of a ordained Sangha thing that, it's not mandatory, but I've asked those who are ordained practitioners in our Sangha to wear their robes publicly so that people can see practitioners. This is a problem in the West, that in Asia, when you go to Asia, you can see Buddhist monks, nuns, tantrics wearing the signs of a tantric practitioners. You can see people wearing, what do you call that, bindu on the forehead for practitioners, different kinds of symbols in the forehead that tell that that person is a practitioner of this or that type of Dharma. But we don't have any of that in the West. And so visibility of Dharma in the West, I think, is, we need to do something about it, because, we go to that supermarket next door and people are fucked, pardon my French, people are fucked by their self-based confusion and they have no clue whatsoever how to get out of that. most priests don't know what to do about it. Psychologists don't know what to do about it. Doctors don't know what to do about it. Nobody knows what to do about it. Well, they have their own tools, try to help it, but none of them is yoga. None of them is teaching that directly addresses ignorance caused by self-based delusion. And that's where yogis and yogas come in. That's where Dharma comes in. So I think that it would be very important to do whatever we can do to promote Dharma among people, visibly, publicly, so that little by little people can see practitioners walking on the street. And I think it's, a simple association to make. When somebody sees a person wearing a robe publicly, it instantly tells something that, oh, that must be some kind of a ascetic, yogi or meditator, something like that. So it makes associations very quickly. And when you take a walk in the local community mall, supermarket, in one half an hour, hundreds of people see you. And through this simple action, things can progress very quickly. Do you understand? So, hopefully, there is really lessening of self-based delusion in the world and in our communities. If you are not wearing robes, like I said, it's not mandatory in our not even for ordained students. But if you're not wearing robes, or if you're not an ordained person, then you could promote Dharma in perhaps some other way. Perhaps arranging events, weekend courses, retreats, weekly sessions, weekly meetings. In one way or the other, do something. Express your bodhicitta, trying to get the message out there. Nowadays, it's the case that when, Buddhism has been in the West for, well, the first teachers came over 100 years ago, but really the community started becoming established like 50 years ago maybe. So, practitioners of the first generation are 70, 80 years old by now. So they can be like every once in a while you might meet a young person of 20, 30-year-old who says that my mother or my father already started practicing in the late 60s or 70s, and I've been brought up in the atmosphere of meditation and Dharma and met some teachers and so on. But those stories are very rare. If you go to India, Nepal, Tibet, that's the culture. Dharma is part of their culture. Even when you turn on the radio, there's somebody singing of the how magnificent Sri Krishna is. I remember like over 10 years ago, when I was once in India, there people have small businesses in towns, and sometimes these businesses have really funny names. Like really funny names. And they often like to put the names of saints and, any saint into that business name. And the funniest one that I've ever seen was Jesus Christ oils and lubricants. There's an actual business called that somewhere in India. Jesus Christ oils and lubricants. It was some kind of an engine, car engine fixing place. I would love to have a Jesus Christ oils and lubricants here in Järvenpää, but there isn't. So anyway, the point is that let's do something together, trying to help, not to recruit, but trying to help others. And also, when it comes to a bit more yogic application of bodhicitta, as you know, we can exercise or apply compassion in different ways. We can use it to check if our recognition of the basic state is right, and we can use it to stretch the subtle body open. We can use it to open our hearts, open our subtle body emotionally. And another way to also do this is to when you can chant mantras, and we've been talking about prayer wheels. I also have a prayer wheel here. So is to chant mantras to all physical and non-physical beings around you. Just actually chant to them, even if you cannot perceive or see them directly. Just chant to all sentient beings. That is one of the most bodhisattvic action you can do, because somebody will hear it. Not physically, but well, your neighbor might hear it physically, but non-physically. Different tantrics, yogis, masters talk about this. That maybe we can't see, maybe we can perceive the non-physical space, but there are many beings around us. And I don't mean to scare you with ghost stories, but it is a simple fact that many meditators and yogis and masters have discussed that, there are non-physical beings, and that we all are in this samsara, and everybody is looking for lasting happiness. So maybe they won't be able to see where exactly the mantra chanting comes from. Maybe you won't be able to see who is catching or hearing it. But nevertheless, the name and the blessing of the Guru leaves your mind, your energy, and can be received by somebody who is really in the need of it. Perhaps you could make this a bit closer to your own story situation, is that you can think of your present or deceased friends and relatives and chant for them. You don't necessarily need to visualize them, but you can also visualize. Let's say if your grandparents have passed away, you can visualize them in front of you, or just in your mind think that when you're spinning the wheel and or chanting the mantra, it's your grandparents who are getting the blessing from the name of the Guru. So actively finding ways how to get the message out there. Really trying to help, really trying to make change. And this is really excellent for our own progress and development in practice. Because, once again, Bodhicitta is the foundation of Mahayana practice. Expressing, exercising Bodhicitta is a direct way to Buddhahood. Direct way. We discussed also subtle perception earlier, and it's also possible, especially if you meditate a few days, chant by yourself, then ability to see, have visionary experiences activates momentarily or for longer periods. Then you can see that, that yogis, masters, adepts who have given accounts of the six realms and different kinds of beings, you can actually see that these realms and beings exist. So it gives us confidence. Practice can gives us tools to verify these things, and then we have confidence about it. When we see something with our own eyes, everything changes. Up until that, it's just learned information, learned knowledge. So as yogis, as meditators, we always seek to have first-hand experience, first-hand knowledge. And this is something that is forgotten. I almost did this. This is something that is forgotten way too often, especially in the West. People forget that everything that the teachers say is not supposed to be believed, but to be tested and tried and verified or falsified through one's own direct experience. That's why I sometimes refuse to answer some questions that people ask me, because what I prefer to do is to teach my students ways how you can verify yourself. This is true regarding six realms. This is true regarding rebirth, karma, all these things, these central doctrines in Buddhism. You can, in fact, when you meditate enough, you can in fact see that the doctrine of rebirth and reincarnation and transmigration actually happens, and it has happened to everybody, every one of us. You can find it out yourself. We all can. Same with karma. When our perception becomes fine-tuned and the mind is silent enough, you can see how that karma, the law of cause and effect, cause and consequence, that it happens, and that it's actually it's just a mechanism of how things work. Karma is like in Christianity, some Christians have the notion that God is some supreme entity that, if somebody's been a bad boy, the God goes like this and hits you on the head and punishes you somehow. And it's kind of left to the God that what the punishment will be, whether it will be something like a slap on the cheek or slap on the ass or purgatory for 10 years, or it's kind of, there's no clear definition what God is and how he takes care of things. But karma is a very precise thing. Karma is it's very precise. Law of karma. It is strict but fair. It's just a mechanism. There's no divine entity or God or guru who is imposing karma on others. It's all our own karma. But whether or not karma exists in the first place and is true in the first place, we can find out. There is nothing else preventing us from verifying, validifying these doctrines except our own limitations. Those limitations may be that, well, I can't do that. I can't. How? I'm just a guy who started meditating 4 months ago and I can't do that. Well, if you've been meditating just for a short time, then you probably can't. But, if you deny it from yourself by saying that, well, that's the stuff that my guru or my lama or only the cave yogis, this is the stuff of the cave yogis. I'll just take the word of my teacher or my instructor. That's not right. That's not the way to understand Dharma at all. So we can. And we should empower ourselves through this first-hand knowledge. And if we do, everything will be all right. And then Guru Rinpoche and all the masters will be proud of us. And then first of all, we are confident about our own practice and about our own path. If we only have book knowledge and second-hand knowledge, there is no end to confusion. Second-hand knowledge doesn't put a stop to confusion. You know this yourself. Before your own first Bhumi opening, your first awakening, you might have heard everything about awakening from Eckhart Tolle, from Ramana Maharishi, from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, from dozen other sources. But did you understand what awakening is? Of course you didn't. But when you got awakened yourself, then you knew. There it is. And I think that it's great that, that because all human beings have same subtle system, it means that their mind functions and Buddha nature, as well as samsaric mind, their samsaric problems, are the same. So it's kind of fascinating to think that it's universal. The teaching of Dharma is universal, applies and works and can benefit anybody. And then that's a good bridge to come back to bodhicitta and using whatever ways we have to tell others about it. But like I also said, maybe it's instead of trying to promote some fancy mantra or tantra or guru practices or ati yoga or chokchen or some of these terms, to discuss suffering with people. That's what they can understand. Was it too preachy? Was it too serious? This is the mudra of Mahasiddha Bhumis and Mahasiddhas.
I just wonder, I mean, what comes to mind then is what Babaji said to you about find your own way. I wonder if there's an element of that for practitioners in spreading the Dharma as well, in the sense that, you know, you say mingle with people. Well, I'm not particularly sociable and wear this out. Is there, I mean, I haven't really reflected on it that much, but it seems as though there's a personal expression of the Dharma which becomes more authentic because I'm doing it not because you said it was a good idea to do it, because I feel I want to help people, and this is my way of helping, sort of thing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. A couple of days ago, I went to have a massage after a long time, and as I was coming back and going to a train stop, two Hare Krishnas walked by me, and they didn't look happy, let's put it that way. They were coming from the city center where they had probably have been selling books and chanting the Krishna mantra there in marketplace or on some corner. Yeah, it is important to feel it while you're doing it, instead of just being told to do this. But talking of Hare Krishnas, I felt wonderful about it, because I always do when I see Hare Krishnas, because they are the only ones doing it in the West. Yeah. Okay, let's take 5-minute break and then practice.